What's good, everyone? OJ here. Welcome back to another video. Today we've got a discussion on if a Nintendo Switch Pro is really needed this late into the life of the Nintendo Switch, and what exactly is Nintendo going to do going forward with a next-gen Switch or with a bigger upgrade. I wanted to talk about this because I referenced it in a video that I did earlier, how this was a discussion for another day when it comes to the future of Nintendo, and that day is today when it comes to this video. But before we get into anything, please make sure you hit that like button and also subscribe if you are someone new. Now let's get into this discussion on the Nintendo Switch and everything. So recently, Nintendo did reveal the Nintendo Switch OLED system. This is a very nice looking system. It has some good upgrades to it when it comes to the kickstand in the back. The enhanced audio is very nice. The OLED screen is really cool. OLED is obviously much better technology than LCD. You're going to get a better look when you play in portable. They have the LAN connection set up there, the Ethernet port for the dock, but the internals of the system are still the same. It's still the same in terms of what you got from the Nintendo Switch Lite and also with the regular Nintendo Switch, which disappointed a lot of people out there. In addition to dashing the hopes for many of the core gamers out there for a more powerful Nintendo Switch, the rumors saying a 4K Switch, a DLSS Switch that could be coming out in 2021, and so many other things. So I wanted to talk about what Nintendo's going to do, because no matter what way you slice it, the Nintendo Switch is definitely on the second half of its act, the second half of its life. It's not in the beginning stages to where maybe you have time to bring out another revision on top of that, and it can still happen. But I wanted to discuss what they're going to do for the next gen Nintendo Switch and how they're going to approach that. Is a Nintendo Switch Pro needed at this point? Now, last year, Nintendo stated that they're about halfway through the life of the Nintendo Switch. Now, Nintendo counts years by calendar years, not actual years. So I'll break it down for you guys. 2017 would be the first year of the Nintendo Switch. 2018 would be the second year of the Nintendo Switch. 2019 would be the third year of the Nintendo Switch. 2020 would be the fourth year of the Nintendo Switch, and that's when Nintendo said that they're halfway through. So we would be in the fifth year of the Nintendo Switch at this point. So for about halfway, which was last year, that means Nintendo plans to go for roughly about another 3 years or so, right? So what are they going to do to make the system last in that last half of 3 years and help drive developer support up, help drive what made the Nintendo Switch so successful? How are they going to keep that momentum going? Are sales just enough? Well, I think that the Nintendo Switch OLED factors a big part into that. So obviously they're trying to get this new system out and provide the options for people from $200 to $300, now $350 for multiple purchasing options, and also to sell the same system to people once again and newcomers as well. So there's a variety of things that they're trying to do with the Nintendo Switch OLED, but of course it doesn't have any of that internal bump up or upgrade that the core gamers were looking for to enhance experiences when it comes to third-party games and even some of Nintendo's own first-party games that might not run as well as they could if it got a little bit of a bump to take advantage of a newer system, like they've done with the new Nintendo 3DS, for example, actually adding a bit more power and everything in there so games can run exclusively on the system in some cases, or even run better in other cases. So let's talk about this and what they're going to do. Is it too late for Nintendo Switch Pro? Well, it depends, I think, on a number of factors. I think that it really depends on how long Nintendo is going to stretch out this generation. If Nintendo feels they still have about a good 4 calendar years left, 3 to 4 or so, then I think that we could see a Nintendo Switch Pro announced next year or the following year and have that ride out till the next gen Nintendo Switch is there. However, I think that these things are dynamic. If Nintendo sees that sales are kind of dipping and they need to kind of get the next thing out, I feel that they probably won't have a Nintendo Switch Pro. They might hold off on that, whatever new SoC or whatever new chip they decide to use, hold off on that, which can also save them money by holding off and seeing how the tech progresses. Wait a bit more, then release that system as the next gen Switch when you're ready to go. You've got all of your tech in place and what you want to use, and of course talking to third parties and making sure everything is better set up than maybe what we saw with the Nintendo Switch. Although Nintendo did more for talking to third parties and getting their opinion on the hardware than they've ever done like in the history of Nintendo. Nintendo actually went out and got opinions and made changes based off of what third-party developers said, like Capcom, when it comes to increasing the RAM of the system. So I think that it's a dynamic situation. I think that things can change. Things are fluid. How Nintendo goes about this next gen era, or this revision era, or this Switch Pro era, if there's going to be one, it's really dependent on how things go in the marketplace. If the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch OLED and the Nintendo Switch Lite are just continuing to just kill it in the sales market, there's really no need for Nintendo to say, hey, let's rush out this new next gen system, or let's rush out this new Nintendo Switch Pro, or anything like that. There just really isn't. They can continue doing what they're doing. Nintendo, in my opinion, for those that are concerned about the third-party support and stuff like that, Nintendo already gets almost no new major games. I know, we've seen them before. We've seen the Impossible ports, the Doom Eternal, we've seen the Outer Worlds, The Witcher, stuff like that. But if you count those games compared to what comes out on other platforms with the Xbox and the PlayStation, it's not even close. And a lot of those games that did come out were on previous generation platforms with the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 and everything. A lot of the games that are going to come out like just currently or coming out cross-gen, a lot of those from the Western developers, not Japanese developers, but Western developers, are completely skipping the Nintendo Switch, and they've been skipping the Nintendo Switch dating all the way back to 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. Switch just gets a few games here or there, and I think we've all known that. Something that people don't want to admit 100%, but we've all known that, and sometimes gamers act like, oh my gosh, it's a big issue, they're not going to be able to get this, and this game, and it's like they haven't been getting those games anyway. They're not getting the Call of Duties, they're not getting the Battlefields, the Maddens. There's so many games that they're not. Dying Light 2. I mean, the list goes on and on in terms of games that they're not getting. The Nintendo Switch has been, when it comes to the backbone of the platform, it's been Nintendo first party games that's been driving everything. It's been indie games that have been driving stuff as well. And it's been the Japanese developers that have been driving things that make customized third-party games for the Nintendo Switch. Stuff like Bravely Default 2, stuff like Monster Hunter Rise, Monster Hunter Stories 2, No More Heroes coming out. The customized games made specifically for the Nintendo Switch, or the RPGs that don't have the biggest and best graphics but people still like to play, those games, those ports, all of that has been driving the system, not the big games that drive Microsoft and Sony's platforms, like the Call of Duties or the Ubisoft Watch Dogs or Assassin's Creed or things like that. Those haven't been driving the Nintendo Switch, and that's okay. The Nintendo Switch, honestly, does not need to have every single thing that the other platforms have. And this is tough for some people to kind of realize this, because I get it. Sometimes you want to have it on your platform that you like to play the most. Like, I completely understand that. But as someone myself, as a multi-platform gamer, and I think a lot of the core gamers out there that are worried about this have multiple platforms where they can play something on something else, it's not something, in my opinion, that should be worrying at this point in 2021 when it's been happening for 4 years. Like, imagine somebody slapping you every time that they see you, and then you still being surprised when you get slapped when they see you again. And that's kind of how I see this whole Nintendo Switch third-party situation when it comes to some of these games or people being concerned. Well, you've already been slapped multiple times over and over and over and over again, right? We're just talking about hypothetically, not actually literally. Well, maybe some of you guys have been slapped a number of times. But what I'm saying is that if you've been slapped so many times over and over, and then it happens again, or it keeps on happening, it's not really surprising anymore, right? right? And that's kind of my thought process. It's not surprising to me. And to be honest, even before it started happening, it wasn't surprising to me because I said this was going to happen because of the specs of the Nintendo Switch, because the Nintendo Switch is not a box that sits there with Blu-ray and with digital and with all this other stuff that these other systems do when it comes down to it, and with like the onboard memory 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte or 865 gigabytes or 600 something, these odd numbers now, these weird numbers that are going there. Doesn't have all that. They're not doing the x86. They're just not doing that. So you're not going to get all of the same support. And the only reason why the Switch has got the support that it's got is because of the sales of the system. If it didn't sell like it's selling, it could have been another Wii U situation or another Nintendo 3DS situation where you have Japanese developers supporting it, but pretty much everybody else is kind of like meh. And even then, some Japanese developers were just like, oh, we're kind of done with the 3DS as well, midway to later-ish of its life, and then it just completely dropped off the face of the map once the Nintendo Switch came out. So that's kind of how I feel going forward. So I think that with Nintendo and the next gen propositions and what they do with that, I feel that they should wait. I mean, I think that they should see kind of how things are going. Of course, they're developing that next system out there. They're probably looking at a variety of different options and ways that they can attack the market. But if they need to wait for that next gen Nintendo Switch and make it a beast tier of a hybrid platform, then you can definitely wait. If you feel that you need a shot in the arm because that next gen Nintendo Switch isn't ready to go and you want to just be able to extend things out just a bit, okay, well, next year or the year after, if you've got something that does increase the specs and all that, bring it out and see what prices you can get for it, see what you can do. And if people want to buy it, the market will decide. If they don't want to buy it, then they won't buy it, and Nintendo can move on to the next thing, just as long as they have the key factor out of all of this. And I think sometimes, believe it or not, this gets lost in the shuffle when it comes to talking about this, and it's the games and it's the fun factor. Not everybody counts pixels. Not everybody counts frame rates. Not everybody looks online and says, well, this person says this game isn't worth this price, so I'm going to think it's not worth this. Some people just like to pick up their game and play the game, and if there's some frame rate here or there, or if there's issues with resolution here or there, they don't care as long as they are having fun. And to be honest, that is the majority of people who play video games across the board. Microsoft, Sony, whatever the case is, Nintendo, people just want to have fun playing games when it comes down to it, and they don't all just log in online to see what a bunch of nerds are saying about this game or that frame rate or this development atmosphere or that. They just see a game that they think looks good and they buy the game. They have online, oh, that looks pretty cool, I'll check this game out, and they get it. They just get what they want, they go about their day. And I think that that base, the non-vocal base, is the silent majority when it comes to everything with this. And that's why maybe, just maybe, Nintendo just said, hey, we're just going to do this and we'll see what happens as we go along here. But it's an interesting discussion to have. I feel that there's definitely discussion to talk about when it comes down to if Nintendo's going to make another revision for the Switch before a next gen Switch comes out, if they're just going to go with the next gen Switch. So what are your thoughts on this, guys? What do you think Nintendo's going to plan going forward in the future? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video here. Check out the links in the description. I've got my Twitter page on there. Go ahead and give us a follow if you can. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're someone new, and hit that like and share the video if you can. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll catch you for the next one. Peace.